Hello again and welcome to our first video of a two-part series for DMA 30 section 3.7. Today we're going to start our discussion on percents, decimals, and fractions. In this video we're going to talk about the definition of a percent, then we're going to look at writing percents as fractions, and then finally writing percents as decimals. In the next video we'll talk about how to write decimals as percents and then fractions as percents. So this way in this video we'll go from percents to different types of numbers, and then we'll reverse it next time and go from decimals and fractions to percents. We'll start with the definition of percents. Percent means parts per 100. So we can think of a percent as the numerator of a fraction that has a denominator as 100. So in this example here we have the percent 93%, and we think of that as the fraction of 93 over 100. So the numerator, the top part, is the percent part, and we add that percent sign. We can look at this pictorially too. Here's a grid here with 100 different blocks, and 93% of that is shaded in orange here, 93 blocks out of the total 100. So this represents pictorially 93% of 100. So let's look at an example. A coin was tossed 100 times and it landed heads up 51 times. So what percent of the time did the coin land heads up? Well, we're going to take the number of times it landed heads up, 51, and write it over the number of times the coin was tossed. In this case it was 100. So we have 51 over 100, and since the denominator is 100, we can write the numerator as 51%. If we wanted to find what percent of the time it landed tails up, we would do the total 100 minus 51 to see how many times it was tails up, so that's 49. Okay, we'll write that over 100, the total number of times it was flipped. And since the denominator is 100, we take the numerator 49 and we'll write that as 49%. Now let's look at writing percents as fractions. To write a percent as a fraction, we'll drop the percent symbol and write the number over 100. And if we can simplify that fraction, we will. So in this first example, an average watermelon is 92% water. Write this percent as a fraction in simplest form. So we'll start with our fraction, or our percent, 92%, and we know that's the same as 92 over 100. Okay, this isn't simplified because we have common factors. Both of these are even, so I'm going to divide the top and bottom by 2. Alright, 92 divided by 2 is going to be 46. And then 100 divided by 2 is 50. They're both even, so I can divide by 2 again. 46 divided by 2 is 23. Over 50 divided by 2 is 25. Alright, there are no more common factors between 23 and 25, so this will be our fraction in simplest form. Let's look at a couple more examples. In example 1, we'll write 13.3% as a fraction in simplest form. So we'll start with our fraction 13.3%, and we'll write that as a fraction over 100. 13.3 over 100. Okay, we don't want a decimal in the numerator of our fraction, so to get this, get rid of the decimal, we're going to need to move this decimal over one place, and we're going to do that by multiplying by 10. We take the place value of the last number in the decimal, which is in the tens place, and we multiply by that power of 10. And whatever we do to the top, we'll do to the bottom. So when we multiply the top by 10, we get 133 over 100 times 10, which is 1,000. There are no common factors between 133 and 1,000, So this is the fraction in simplest form. In example 2, we'll write 83 1/3 as a fraction in simplest form. So let's start with 83 1/3 percent and write that over 100. We don't want a mixed number as a numerator of a fraction, so let's go ahead and change that mixed number to a improper fraction. 83 times 3 plus 1 will give us 250 over that original denominator 3. And this is still over 100, but let's think of that as 100 over 1. Now we have a fraction here on top divided by another fraction. We're going to use our properties of fractions to say this is 25 over 3 times the reciprocal of the other fraction. So we'll multiply by 1 over 100. We'll flip that bottom fraction. And now we can multiply. I'm going to eliminate common factors first. 100 and 250 both have a common factor of 50, so I'll divide them both by 50. 100 divided by 50 will be 2, and then 250 divided by 50 will be 5. And I've eliminated all those common factors, so I can multiply. 5 times 1 will be 5, and then 3 times 2 will be 6. So our simplified fraction here will be 5/6. Another example, we want to write 210 as a fraction, 210% as a fraction in simplest forms. Now generally you may have heard the phrase, give 110%. Well, you can't have a percent over 100. That's mostly true, but in some cases, like in the future where we talk about percent increases and percent decreases, we can have an increase or a decrease above 100%. So sometimes we're going to run into percents over 100. In this case, we're going to write 210% as 210 over 100. There's a common factor of 10, so we'll divide the top by 10 and the bottom by 10. 210 divided by 10 is 21, and 100 divided by 10 is 10. So we get the fraction 21 over 10. There are no more common factors, so this will be in simplest form. Alright, lastly we'll write 0.54% as a fraction. That's going to be 0.54 over 100. We need to get rid of the decimal. The last number in our decimal is in the hundredths place, so we'll multiply by 100. We'll have 54 on top over 10,000 on bottom. Now, time to divide out common factors. I know that they're both divisible by 2, so I'll start there. 54 divided by 2 will be 27. And 10,000 divided by 2 will be 5,000. And at this point, there are no more common factors between 27 and 5,000, so we have the fraction here in simplest form. Next, we'll look at writing percents as decimals. To write a percent as a decimal, we're going to drop the percent sign and divide the given number by 100, which in essence is moving the decimal places 2 places to the left. So you could just plug the number in your calculator and divide by 100, but you can just move the decimal place 2 places to the left and you'll have your decimal. So let's look at this first example. Let's write 16.43% as a decimal. Well, this is, when we divide this by 100, we're going to move the decimal place 2 places to the left. So we'll get 0.1643. And I like to add a 0 at the front when I'm working with decimals. Okay. So the next percent, write 2.06 as a percent as a decimal. Okay. If we move the decimal 2 places to the left, we have an empty space there, and we're going to fill in that empty space with a 0. So we would write this as 0.026 excuse me, 0.0206. And now we've written that percent as a decimal. All right. Write 3 3/4% as a decimal. I don't really want to work with a mixed number here if I don't have to. So I'm going to change this mixed number to a decimal. I recognize that 3/4 is 0.75, so this will be 3.75%. Need to move that decimal 2 places to the left and put a 0 in that empty space. So as a decimal, this is going to be 0.0375. Alright, write 600% as a decimal. When we have whole numbers, the decimal is implied to be after the ones place, so all the way to the right there. We'll move that 2 places to the left. Okay, and so it's between the 6 and the 0. We can simply write that as 6. We could write it as 0.00, but it's not necessary. We can drop those zeros after the decimal off and just write it as 6. Lastly, we have 0.8 as a decimal. Decimal goes 2 places to the left. We get an empty a 0 in that placeholder there, so we get 0.008 for 0.8%. So to review, in this video we covered the definition of a percent, then we looked at writing percents as fractions and then as decimals. Next time we'll go the other way and we'll look at writing decimals as percents and then writing fractions as percents.